Okay, folks, so we're looking here at our Winter 21 question paper 6.1 question 6, which is the dreaded plan and experiment question. All right, why is it dreaded? Well, it requires you to write a lot, and it's also the last question in this paper. Bit nasty to put it there. Okay, but we've got to go for it. 7 marks. So actually in a paper 6, not a very high weighting. Okay, but as we'll see, we're looking for the same things, and it's quite a lot of nice marks to get. So I think instead of being afraid of it, we'll just launch ourselves in. We're looking at a pendulum, and we're measuring the period of a pendulum. Now, the reason that we're taking a bit of time to define what a period of a pendulum is because that's not GCSE content, okay? GCSE, you're not expected to know what a period of a pendulum is. It is the time that it takes for us to go to A to B, back through C, and then back to A again. Okay, so time for one complete swing. All right. This happens very rarely in paper 6, where you're asked a question outside of the syllabus, and really it's about how you would go about tackling it, and we'll see how to tackle that as well. Just a small point. On the left-hand side is my work stuff. On the right-hand side is the mark scheme here as well. Okay, and we'll talk about that as we go. Now, we scroll down. Okay. We'll look at our question. We're asked to plan an experiment to investigate how the period, which is the dependent variable, what we measure, depends on the mass, which is the independent variable. You're given some apparatus and helpfully told you don't have to do the investigation. Well, it'd be difficult if you were, because you'd be in an exam hall when you read this. You're given some equipment, and you're asked in your answer to include various things. Other apparatus, a brief method, the variables you control, how you will process and use your results, and how you will use your results to reach a conclusion. Now, we just stop there for a second. We look at the marking, the way this is marked. You are offered 7 marks, okay, all right, and they have broken it down into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections, okay. You can have 1 mark from each section and then 2 from any others, all right? So, for example, you could get, there's only 1 mark available for the additional apparatus. However, you could take that first mark on the method and then take 2 more within the method, or 1 more from the key variables and then 2 below it as well, okay? So, really, what you want to try and do is hit as many marks as you possibly can in your answer, so that you're covering as many of these as possible and you're maximizing the chance of that 7 marks. And you notice there, actually, the number of marks that they're awarding. We've got 5 here, so that's a total of 6, 8, 11, 13 possible marks, okay? 13 things that you can get, all right? You're looking for 7 of them. So actually the size of your task is a lot smaller than you might think. Okay, I would use the advice at the front to kind of guide your writing. Now, what I've done, and I don't know if it's necessarily the way that others would think, okay, is broken it down to a step-by-step process. If you wanted to, you could simply take those headings and answer just like the mark scheme. So you could go, what additional apparatus will I need? I will need a stopwatch. What will my method be? I will do this, 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 this. What will my table be? I'll do this and this. What will my variables be? Etc., etc. I've written it in a more conventional way, which is simply, well, what would I do? Okay, either's fine, as long as you're hitting those key marks. That's what we're looking for. So if I just read what I've got here, first things first, I started off by having a think, and I got a bit distracted, okay, when I wrote this. So you notice there, if you're not sure, make a mistake at the beginning, cross it out, think it through before you write. Do not start writing before you're ready to go. And that's a little mistake I made there, okay? Point number 1, we're going to use a digital scale to measure the mass of the pendulum bob. Now, I thought that was relevant, okay, because we're interested in the mass. Okay, it doesn't actually say that we have one of them, unless I've missed something. Maybe I'm an idiot and I've missed something. Feel free to call me an idiot in the comments. Okay, use the scale to measure the masses. We need to know the values of those masses. Okay, we then want to set up the experiment. We want to attach the pendulum bob to the string and hang it from the clamp. Okay, now that's important because that's part of the the sort of basic process. And you'll notice there's actually, all right, put in there in one of our method marks. Okay, we're going to keep the length constant, and measure it using a meter rule. Okay, we want to keep the same length of the string. Okay, you'll notice there, that's one of our key variables. We'll keep the same length of the string. And we'll measure it using a meter rule. Now, there's no necessarily any marks for that. However, it's always good to state how you're going to know certain things, how you're going to measure certain things. Okay. Raise the bob by a certain height, so we're going to lift it up. And again, we want to control that height. We don't want to change the height because that might change the period of oscillation. Okay. And again, we're going to measure that using a meter rule. And again, we're going to have the same, and effectively we're measuring the same starting position. Now you notice in my answer, I don't say keep the same starting position, I've said keep the same height. That's really the same thing. You would get a mark for that. Okay, you don't have to have exactly what is on the marking scheme. So just be, take that, take the mark scheme not as the only answer, but as a guide. Now we're going to allow the pendulum to oscillate for 10 complete swings. Okay, and we're going to measure the time using a stopwatch and divide by 10 to get the period. A couple of things going on here. One, okay, we're going to use 10 swings. All right, why would we use the same 10 swings? Well, again, that's the same number of oscillations. Generally, when we're measuring a time period, the best thing we can do is allow for repeats. So instead of measuring 10 things individually, we'll measure them 10 altogether and simply divide by the number we measured. You could say 5 here as well. And it just, what that does is it reduces the random error. It makes our work a little bit more accurate. Okay, so anytime you need to measure something like a period, measure it multiple times. This could be of a spring, it could be of a master and a spring, or it could be of a pendulum. But make sure you measure it multiple times and then average. Okay, so we've already hit a few of the points there. All right, we've attached the bob. Okay, we've measured the time. Okay, we've used a stopwatch. Okay, let's go and have a little look later. Okay, we're going to repeat the process. Okay, and average t. And again, we're going to repeat. Okay, each mass. We're going to make sure that each mass is repeated each time. Okay, we're going to choose 5 different mass values. Now, this 5 different mass values, okay, is a little bit contentious. CIE likes to have 6 different data points, okay? You need to have a lot of data points. If you wrote down 10 here, you would be fine, okay? You wouldn't really want to do much more than 10 because that'd be a bit too big an experiment. Okay, so basically what you're going to say is you're going to change the mass value and you're going to repeat the experiment. Okay, you're going to note the data in the table. Well, that's an important point. Let's have a look at what our data table is going to look like. We're going to have the mass in kilograms, and then we're going to have, for example, time 1, time 2, time 3. That's the first, second, and third time we've measured it, and then the average time. Okay, if we look at our table, okay, we want to have columns for mass and for the time, and then we also want to have units, okay, units of kilograms and units of seconds. And again, these are not hard marks to get as long as you remember them. If you're drawing the table, just be careful and check, do I have units there? Do I need units here? The majority of the time will be a yes. Okay. Once we've done that, we'll look at the final bit there. We'll note the data in the table. Now, to be honest, tables of data are not easy to process. They're not useful. Okay. What I would suggest then is we want to plot a graph. Okay. Now, usually we would use T versus M. It's interesting that they've said M against T. To be honest, it doesn't really matter here. I would plot T on the y-axis and M on the x-axis because you usually would have your dependent variable on y and then your independent on the x-axis. Now, at GCSE level, you probably would get away with either. Okay, all right. And then there's a suggestion here to use the results in the table. The table is not very useful, okay? Practically speaking, from a realistic science point of view, we wouldn't really use the table. We'd always try and plot a graph, okay? So it's always a good idea to include a graph. And in my opinion, try and include a line of best fit. And you'll notice there's no mark for that, but I've seen them given in the past. This could be an additional detail which might be quite helpful to getting you another mark, okay? Now, I appreciate that there's quite often very difficult to identify these kind of things, okay? But there are some base level marks that I hope you can see, okay? And they are very much guided by the instructions that you're given at the top here. You're told what to include, so make sure you include it. So if you're really not sure in this exam, in this question, what to do, have a look at that and a little bit of advice there and see, is there anything there that I'm missing? Is there anything that I don't have? Is there anything I've forgotten? Okay, and that should get you started at least. Okay, it does not need to be an essay, it doesn't need to be a dissertation. It can be a very simple description, bullet points, sequential like I've done, okay, would work as well. All right, there's plenty of time on that question, folks. Make sure you're having a look at your answer, thinking about where you went wrong or where you had some issues, and letting me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.